The ballroom fell silent. Every eye turned toward the entrance, not to the Duke, but to his wife. Cecilia Whitmore stood framed in golden light, her chin high, her gown a declaration. Behind her, whispers ignited like wildfire. She knows. She knows about the woman. But Cecilia didn't flinch. She walked forward, each step a quiet war. This was the night everything would shatter or rebuild. If you want to see how a forgotten wife became the most dangerous woman in England, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The marriage was arranged on a Tuesday. Cecilia learned about it over breakfast, the way one might learn about a change in weather. Her father didn't look up from his correspondence when he said it. The Duke of Blackwood has made an offer. We've accepted. She set down her tea. The cup didn't rattle, though her hands wanted to shake. When? 3 weeks. The arrangements are already underway. Her mother smiled from across the table, thin, practiced, the smile of a woman who had also been sold well. You should be grateful, Cecilia. A duchess. Most girls would kill for such a match. Most girls don't know what they're killing. Cecilia was 22, old enough to understand that gratitude was just another word for obedience. She had watched her sisters marry for love and security, watched her brothers negotiate their futures like trade agreements. She had always known her turn would come. She just hadn't expected it to feel like a door closing. "What's he like?" she asked. Her father finally looked up. His eyes were tired, but his voice was firm. Wealthy, respected, powerful. What else matters? Everything else, she thought, but she didn't say it. The Duke arrived exactly on time for their first meeting. Cecilia watched from the drawing room window as his carriage pulled up. Black, polished, enormous. The kind of carriage that announced importance before its occupant even stepped out. When he did, she felt something sink in her chest. Adrian Blackwood was tall, dark-haired, handsome in the severe way that portraits are handsome. His face was all sharp lines and controlled expression. He moved like a man who had never stumbled, never hesitated, never doubted a single decision in his life. He looked expensive, untouchable, cold. Her mother nudged her toward the door. "Smile, darling. First impressions." Cecilia smiled. She had practiced it for years. The demure, pleasant expression that said, "I am exactly what you expect." It fit like a mask. The Duke entered the room with her father, barely glancing in her direction. When he finally did, his gaze swept over her once, assessing, cataloging, dismissing. "Miss Whitmore," he said. His voice was smooth, clipped, a formality. "Your Grace." She curtsied, because that's what was expected. He didn't offer his hand, didn't step closer, just stood there 3 feet away like she was a piece of furniture he was considering purchasing. Her father gestured toward the settee. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." We, not you. Cecilia understood immediately that the discussion would not include her, except as subject matter. She sat. Adrian sat across from her, not beside her. The distance felt intentional. Her father began talking about settlements, estates, timelines. Adrian listened, occasionally nodding. His eyes drifted to the window, to the clock, to anywhere but her. Cecilia folded her hands in her lap and studied him. Tried to find something, warmth, curiosity, even polite interest. But there was nothing. He looked at her the way men look at livestock at market, evaluating, transactional. Finally, her father paused. "Perhaps the young people would like a moment to speak privately?" Adrian's jaw tightened just slightly. "That won't be necessary. The terms are acceptable. We can proceed." Cecilia's mother laughed, nervous, fluttering. "Surely you'd like to know each other a bit, Your Grace." "We'll have time enough after the wedding." He stood, smoothing his jacket. "I have appointments in London. If the contracts are ready by Friday, I'll review them then." He left without another word to her. Didn't ask about her interests, her family, her thoughts on marriage or duchy life or anything at all. Just walked out, his boots echoing on the marble floor. Her mother rushed to the window to watch him go. "Well, he's very dignified." Dignified. That was one word for it. Cecilia sat very still, her hands still folded, her smile still fixed. Inside, Something was screaming. The wedding was enormous and empty. St. George's Church was packed with hundreds of people Cecilia didn't know. Dukes, earls, viscounts, their wives dripping in jewels and judgment. The kind of crowd that came to witness a spectacle, not a union. She wore white, layers of silk and lace that cost more than her family's annual income. Her mother had cried while helping her dress, kept saying, "You look like a princess," as if that meant happiness instead of captivity. Cecilia looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger, beautiful, poised, perfect, hollow. The ceremony blurred. She remembered the walk down the aisle, endless, everyone staring. She remembered Adrian waiting at the altar, his face unreadable. She remembered the vows, spoken in a voice that didn't sound like hers. "I do. I do." The words felt like a sentencing. When Adrian kissed her, it was brief, cold, obligatory. His lips barely touched hers. No warmth, no promise. Just a gesture to satisfy tradition. The crowd applauded. Cecilia smiled. Inside, she was drowning. The reception was held at Blackwood Hall, Adrian's ancestral estate. Cecilia had never seen it before. She hadn't been invited to visit beforehand. "No need," Adrian had said through his secretary. "You'll see it soon enough." Now she stood in the ballroom, surrounded by crystalline chandeliers and polished marble, and felt like she'd been swallowed by something vast and indifferent. People congratulated her with dead eyes. "Such a wonderful match. You must be thrilled. The Duke is so fortunate." No one said, "You're fortunate." They knew better. Adrian stood across the room, surrounded by men in dark suits. They talked business, trade, politics, investments. He laughed once, a short bark that sounded more like dismissal than amusement. He hadn't looked at her since they left the church. Her new sister-in-law, Adrian's younger sister Margaret, appeared at her elbow with champagne. "You'll get used to it," she said quietly. "Used to what?" "Being invisible." Margaret's smile was kind but sad. "Adrian doesn't do affection. Never has. Our father beat it out of him young. Love was weakness. Emotion was failure. You learn to live around it." Cecilia took the champagne. "What if I don't want to live around it?" Margaret's smile faded. "Then you'll be miserable. Trust me, I've watched women try to change him. It doesn't work. He is what he is." She walked away, leaving Cecilia alone in a room full of people. That night, the servant showed her to the Duchess's chambers, a sprawling suite on the opposite end of the hall from Adrian's rooms. The message was clear. Separate lives. Separate worlds. The bed was massive, draped in velvet. It felt like a coffin. Adrian came to her once, near midnight. He knocked, and waited for her to answer. When she opened the door, he stood in the hallway, still fully dressed. "I wanted to ensure you're settled," he said. "I am." "Good." He hesitated, something flickering across his face. For a moment, she thought he might say something real, might step inside, sit down, ask her how she felt. Instead, he nodded. "Good night, then." He left. Cecilia closed the door, locked it, and sat on the edge of the enormous bed. She didn't cry. Crying would mean she'd expected something different. And she'd known, hadn't she? From that first cold meeting. She'd known exactly what this would be, but knowing didn't make it easier. The first weeks were a lesson in loneliness. Adrian was gone most days. London, business, Parliament. He left before dawn and returned after dark, if he returned at all. When he was home, he took meals in his study or at his club. Cecilia ate alone in the vast dining room, a single-place setting at a table that could seat 30. The servants pitied her. She could see it in their eyes, the way they lingered too long with tea, asked too gently if she needed anything. They'd seen this before. The young wives who arrived hopeful and slowly faded into the wallpaper. Cecilia refused to fade. She started walking the estate. Blackwood Hall sat on over 3,000 acres. Farmland, forests, tenant cottages scattered like seeds. It was beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way. The kind of beauty that didn't care if you appreciated it or not. The head groundskeeper, an old man named Thomas, found her on the third day of wandering. "You'll want boots for that path, Your Grace," he said, nodding toward the muddy track she was attempting in silk slippers. Gets worse before it gets better. Cecilia looked down at her ruined shoes. I didn't think. First time on the land? First time anywhere like this. Thomas smiled, gaps in his teeth. Well, you're the Duchess now. Might as well see what you're Duchess of. He gave her a tour. The fields, the orchards, the crumbling gatehouse. He introduced her to tenant families, workers, children who stared at her fine dress like she was a creature from another world. She was. But she was also standing in their world now, whether she liked it or not. How many people live on the estate? She asked. 243, last count, plus seasonal workers. And the Duke, he manages all this? Thomas paused, choosing his words carefully. The Duke manages the accounts. The land manages itself mostly. We do what we can. Translation. Adrian didn't care. As long as the money came in, the people were invisible. Cecilia felt something harden inside her chest. What needs fixing? Thomas blinked. Ma'am? You said you do what you can. What can't you do? What's broken? He stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Then, slowly, he started talking. The east well was failing. 3 cottages had leaking roofs. The schoolhouse hadn't had books in 5 years. The workers' wages hadn't increased in a decade, while food prices climbed. Cecilia listened to all of it, memorized it. That night, when Adrian came home, rare, unexpected, she was waiting in his study. He stopped in the doorway. What are you doing here? We need to talk about the estate. His face closed like a door. The estate is managed. You don't need to concern yourself. People are struggling. People always struggle. That's not your responsibility. She stood facing him across the desk. I'm the Duchess. If not mine, whose? Mine. And I've delegated it to capable stewards. Capable stewards who haven't repaired a roof in years? Adrian's jaw tightened. You've been here 3 weeks and you think you understand how a duchy operates? I understand when people are being neglected. Neglect would mean I owe them more than I provide. They have housing, work, wages. That's more than most. It's the bare minimum. It's what's required. He moved to his desk, dismissing her with his focus. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is not a charity. It's a business. Sentiment doesn't factor. These are people, not assets. They are both. He didn't look up. Is there anything else? Cecilia felt heat rising in her throat. Do you even care about any of it? The land, the people, this... She gestured around. This life we're supposed to be building? Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were cold, flat. I care about maintaining what my family built over 2 centuries. I care about stability, reputation, and legacy. What I don't care about is romanticized notions of nobility. This isn't a fairy tale, Cecilia. It's a responsibility I was born into, and one you married into. If you can't accept that, you'll be miserable. I'm already miserable. The words came out before she could stop them. Raw, true. Something flickered in Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that familiar coldness. Then I'm sorry, he said, but it doesn't change anything. He went back to his papers. Cecilia stood there another moment, waiting for him to look up, to say something else, to show even a crack of humanity. He didn't. She left. After that, she stopped trying to reach him. If Adrian wanted distance, she'd give him distance, but she wouldn't disappear. She wouldn't fade. She went back to Thomas. I want a full account of every repair needed, every improvement that would make a difference. Your Grace, with respect, the Duke won't approve the funds. I'm not asking the Duke. I'm asking you. Thomas studied her. Then he smiled. Yes, ma'am. Cecilia had her own income, not much. A small trust from her grandmother, but it was hers. She started spending it. New roofing tiles, books for the school, a doctor brought in to see the workers' children. Word spread fast. The Duchess was different. She came to cottages, spoke to people by name, listened. At first, the servants at the main house were wary, then curious, then loyal. Mrs. Davison, the head housekeeper, was the first to truly come around. She found Cecilia in the library one afternoon, surrounded by estate ledgers. You're looking at the wrong books, Mrs. Davison said. Cecilia looked up. Wrong how? Those are what His Grace allows you to see. Sanitized. If you want the real picture, you need the steward's private records. He won't let me see those. Mrs. Davison smiled, a sharp conspiratorial thing. Who said anything about asking permission? They retrieved the records that night. What Cecilia found made her blood run cold. The estate was profitable, very profitable. But the profits weren't being reinvested. They were being siphoned into Adrian's London accounts, used for investments, political donations, social maneuvering. Meanwhile, people were living in near poverty. Cecilia sat back, the ledger open in front of her. She thought about her conversation with Adrian. It's a business. Sentiment doesn't factor. Fine. If he wanted to treat it like a business, she'd treat it like a business too. She started making changes. Small at first. Renegotiating supplier contracts, cutting waste in household expenses. She redirected the savings into repairs, wages, infrastructure. Adrian didn't notice. He was too busy in London, too focused on his own world. But the estate noticed. Productivity increased. Morale lifted. People started calling her our Duchess, with a possessiveness that felt like warmth. Cecilia realized something. She didn't need Adrian's approval. She didn't need his affection. She had power here, real power, and she was going to use it. 3 months into the marriage, Adrian's mother came to visit. The Dowager Duchess was a tall, thin woman with silver hair and a voice like cut glass. She arrived unannounced, sweeping into Blackwood Hall like a winter storm. Cecilia met her in the drawing room. Your Grace, this is a surprise. I don't believe in announcing myself in my own home, the Dowager said, removing her gloves. Though I suppose it's yours now, nominally. Please sit. The Dowager sat, her posture perfect, her gaze sharp. I've been hearing things. Oh? That you've been meddling in estate matters. Cecilia poured tea, steady. I wouldn't call it meddling, I call it management. That's my son's role. Your son is in London. And you think that justifies overstepping? Cecilia met her eyes. I think someone needed to care. So I did. The Dowager studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, short, dry. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A frightened girl. Someone who'd cry herself to sleep every night and eventually settle into quiet irrelevance. She sipped her tea. But you're not settling, are you? No. Good. The Dowager set down her cup. Adrian is my son, and I love him, but he's become what his father made him, cold, controlled, closed. I'd hoped marriage might soften him. It hasn't, but perhaps... She paused. Perhaps it'll sharpen you instead. Cecilia frowned. I don't understand. You're a duchess now, not just a wife. There's a difference. A wife serves her husband. A duchess serves the duchy. If Adrian won't do his duty, then you must. She stood, smoothing her skirts. Don't waste your time trying to make him love you. Make yourself indispensable instead. She left Cecilia sitting there, tea cooling in her cup, those words echoing. Make yourself indispensable. Winter came hard that year. Snow fell in thick sheets, isolating the estate from London. Adrian was trapped at Blackwood Hall for the first time in months. He hated it. Cecilia could see the restlessness in him, the way he paced, the sharp edge to his words with servants, the hours locked in his study. She avoided him mostly. But one night the butler knocked on her door. His Grace requests your presence at dinner. Cecilia looked up from her book. He does? Yes, ma'am. He's asked for both settings in the dining room. It was the first time he'd asked for her company since the wedding. She dressed carefully, not to impress, but to armor herself. Deep blue silk, hair pinned high, the Blackwood sapphires at her throat. When she entered the dining room, Adrian was already seated. He stood when she appeared, a gesture so automatic it seemed almost mocking. Thank you for joining me, he said. She sat. You asked. I did. He signaled the servants to begin serving. They moved silently, pouring wine, setting plates. The silence stretched. Cecilia ate, waiting. Finally, Adrian spoke. I've received reports about your activities. Activities? The repairs, the wage adjustments, the school supplies. Ah, she sipped her wine. And? And I'm told the estate is running more efficiently than it has in years. Is that a complaint? No. He paused. It's an observation. She set down her fork. Are you asking me to stop? I'm asking why you started. Cecilia considered lying, offering some soft answer about duty or compassion, but she was tired of softness. Because no one else would, she said. Because people were suffering and you didn't care. His face hardened. I've kept this estate solvent for... Solvent isn't the same as thriving, and people aren't line items in a ledger. I never claimed they were. Then why treat them like it? Adrian's jaw worked. For a moment she thought he might yell, but his voice came out quiet, controlled. You don't understand the pressures of this position. Then explain them. It's not that simple. Nothing's simple, Adrian, but that's not an excuse for neglect. He stared at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time since they'd met. She stared back, refusing to flinch. You're angry with me, he said finally. I'm disappointed in you. There's a difference. Something cracked in his expression. Barely visible, but there. I didn't want this to be difficult. What did you want? A wife who understood the arrangement, who didn't expect... He stopped. Didn't expect what? Love? Respect? Basic human decency? Didn't expect me to change. His voice was rougher now, unsteady. I am what I am, Cecilia. I can't be someone else. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to be better. He looked away. I don't know how. For the first time she saw it, the crack in his armor. Not weakness exactly, but exhaustion. The weight of being what everyone demanded, what his father had beaten into him, what the world expected. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then learn, she said. Or don't. But stop blaming me for wanting more than cold politeness and separate bedrooms. She stood, setting her napkin down carefully. Adrian didn't stop her. She left him sitting there, alone in that enormous dining room, and felt nothing but tired. The gossip reached London by spring. The Duke of Blackwood's new wife was different, smart, bold, transforming the estate, making appearances without him, speaking with confidence, earning respect. Cecilia didn't know about the rumors until Margaret visited again. You're the talk of the season, Margaret said over tea. Everyone wants to know about the Duchess, who doesn't need her Duke. Cecilia smiled thinly. I'm sure Adrian loves that. Adrian's furious, but he can't say anything publicly without looking weak. Margaret leaned forward. You're playing a dangerous game. I'm not playing anything. I'm surviving. Survival looks like power on you. Margaret's eyes gleamed. Be careful. Power makes people nervous, especially men who think they own it. The warning stuck with Cecilia, but she didn't slow down. She started attending social events in London, salons, charity functions, political dinners, places where wives were expected to smile and nod. She smiled, but she also spoke. Shared ideas. Made connections. People listened. Lady Ashford, one of the sharper society matrons, cornered her at a garden party. You're not like the other young wives. Should I take that as a compliment? That depends. What are you trying to do? Cecilia considered. Build something that doesn't need permission. Lady Ashford laughed, loud, genuine. I like you. Don't let them crush that. But them was a vast category, and they were watching. Adrian was watching too. One night, after she returned from a particularly successful dinner where she'd charmed half the House of Lords, he was waiting in her sitting room. We need to talk, he said. Cecilia set down her gloves. All right. You're making me look weak. I'm making myself strong. There's a difference. In society's eyes, they're the same thing. He stood, agitation clear. You're my wife. Your actions reflect on me. Then perhaps you should have considered that before leaving me alone for months. I've had responsibilities. So have I. I'm fulfilling them. By undermining me? Cecilia's temper flared. How am I undermining you? By running the estate you ignored? By building relationships you're too cold to maintain? By being visible when you prefer to hide? I don't hide. Oh, you absolutely hide. Her voice rose. You hide behind duty and coldness and this idea that emotion makes you weak. But you know what actually makes you weak, Adrian? Refusing to let anyone in. Refusing to care about anything but your damn legacy. You don't understand what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. She was shouting now, months of frustration pouring out. Explain why you married me if you didn't want a partner. Explain why you leave me alone every night. Explain why you care more about what strangers think than what I feel. Adrian's face was pale, his hands clenched. Because feeling doesn't matter, it never has. Duty matters, reputation matters, control matters. Feelings are, they're what? They're dangerous. The words came out broken. They make you vulnerable. They give people power over you, and I won't. He stopped, turned away. Cecilia stood there, breathing hard, something clicking into place. He's terrified, she realized. Not of me, of himself. What happened to you? She asked quietly. Adrian didn't answer. Adrian, what happened? Nothing. His voice was flat again, controlled. Nothing that concerns you. He walked out. Cecilia sank into the chair, her hands shaking. She'd wanted to break through. She had. But what she'd found underneath wasn't cold calculation. It was fear. The answer came from Margaret over wine late one night. You want to know why Adrian's like this? Margaret said. Fine. I'll tell you, but you can't unknow it. I can handle it. Margaret poured herself more wine. Our father was traditional, old-school aristocracy, believed in discipline, hierarchy, control. Adrian was the heir, so he got the worst of it. Worst how? Beatings, mostly, for showing emotion, for crying as a child, for caring about things that weren't appropriate for a duke. Margaret's voice was bitter. When Adrian was 12, he had a governess, young woman, kind. He adored her. Father found out and dismissed her overnight. Adrian cried for days. That's awful. It gets worse. Father told him that caring about people, especially women, made him controllable, made him weak, that a duke couldn't afford affection because it would be used against him. Margaret met her eyes. Then he beat him until Adrian stopped crying, until he learned not to feel. Cecilia's stomach turned. Margaret, he was engaged once before. Young love, real love. The girl was perfect for him. Smart, kind, from a good family. They were happy. Then her father used the engagement to extract political favors from ours, threatened to back out unless certain demands were met. Our father paid, and then told Adrian he'd been manipulated. That love had made him a pawn. What happened to the girl? She married someone else. Adrian never spoke of her again, never spoke of love again. He decided then that marriage would be transactional, safe, controlled. Margaret stood, moving to the window. So when he married you, he wasn't being cruel, he was being careful, keeping you at a distance so you couldn't hurt him, so he couldn't care enough to be hurt. Cecilia sat very still, all the pieces falling into place, the coldness, the distance, the fear underneath. He's not a villain, Margaret said softly. He's just broken, and he doesn't know how to fix himself. After Margaret left, Cecilia stayed up late, thinking. She could walk away, demand a separation, live her own life, let Adrian rot in his self-imposed isolation, or she could fight. Not for him, not yet, but for the possibility of something real. Make yourself indispensable, the Dowager had said. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe she needed to make herself undeniable. The next morning, Cecilia made a decision. She would go to London, fully, completely. She would step into society not as Adrian's quiet wife, but as a force. She would build her own power, her own network, her own identity. And then, when she was strong enough, undeniable enough, powerful enough that he couldn't ignore her, she would make Adrian choose. The man he was, or the man he could be. Either way, she would no longer be invisible. She packed her things that afternoon, informed the staff she'd be spending the season in London. When Adrian heard, he sent a note. Just one line. Is this necessary? She sent one back. Yes. She left the next day. And the real war began. London swallowed her whole. The townhouse Adrian maintained on Grosvenor Square was smaller than Blackwood Hall, but no less grand. Cream stone facade, iron railings painted black, windows that caught the afternoon sun like watchful eyes. Cecilia arrived on a Thursday, her trunks following behind in a second carriage. The staff stood in a nervous line by the entrance, unsure how to greet a duchess who'd arrived alone. "Your Grace, what?" the butler stammered. "We weren't. His Grace didn't inform us. I'm informing you now," Cecilia said, stepping past him into the marble foyer. "I'll be staying for the season, possibly longer." She watched their faces flicker with confusion, concern, curiosity. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. She was done caring what people thought she should be. That first night, she sat alone in the drawing room with the windows open, listening to the city, carriages rattling over cobblestones, distant laughter, the hum of a world that never slept. It felt alive in a way the countryside didn't. Dangerous, maybe, but alive. Margaret arrived the next morning with pastries and scandal sheets. "You actually did it," she said, sweeping into the breakfast room like she owned it. "I thought you might lose your nerve. Did you come here to encourage me or doubt me?" "Both." Margaret dropped into a chair, spreading the papers across the table. "Look, you're already news." Cecilia scanned the columns. "Duchess of Blackwood takes up residence in London. Alone. Duke's new wife seeks independence. Whispers of discord in the Blackwood marriage." "They're vultures," Cecilia muttered. "They're useful," Margaret corrected. "Let them talk. Every mention of your name is currency. The question is what you spend it on." "Meaning?" "Meaning you can either hide from the gossip or weaponize it. Make yourself so interesting they can't look away. Then, when you have their attention, use it for something that matters." Cecilia looked at her sister-in-law. "You've thought about this." "I've lived it, just less successfully." Margaret bit into a pastry. "I'm not a duchess. You are. That title opens doors I've never touched. Don't waste it." So Cecilia didn't waste it. She started accepting invitations, every single one. Dinners, afternoon teas, charity auctions, literary salons. Places where wives were decorative accessories. She showed up and refused to be decorative. At Lady Pemberton's salon, she debated agricultural reform with a member of Parliament, citing crop rotation data she'd learned managing the estate. The man blinked at her like she'd grown a second head. You've studied this?" "I've implemented it. There's a difference." People overheard. Conversation shifted toward her instead of around her. At the Duchess of Ashford's garden party, she spoke with 3 bankers about investment strategies for rural infrastructure. They started polite, patronizing. 10 minutes later, they were taking notes. "Where did you learn finance?" one asked. "From fixing my husband's neglect," she said sweetly. The banker laughed, surprised, genuine. "I like you. You're not boring." Boring. That was death in London society. Be beautiful, be charming, but never, ever be boring. Cecilia was many things. Boring wasn't one of them. Within 3 weeks, she was being invited to smaller, more exclusive gatherings, the kind where real power moved beneath polite conversation. She met Lord Hastings, who controlled half the textile trade, Lady Catherine Morland, whose family had the king's ear, Sir Richard Cross, who ran intelligence networks most people didn't know existed. They didn't dismiss her. They engaged. "You're strategic," Lady Catherine said one evening, cornering Cecilia by the punch bowl. "Most young wives flutter and giggle. You listen, calculate, strike." Is that a compliment or a warning? Both. Lady Catherine sipped her drink. "Be careful. The higher you rise, the harder they'll try to cut you down, especially the men who think power belongs to them alone." "Let them try." Lady Catherine smiled. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." The invitations kept coming, and with them, opportunities. A chance to speak at a women's educational charity. She spoke about literacy programs for tenant children, shared actual results from Blackwood Estate. The room was silent when she finished. Then applause, loud and long. A seat on the board of a hospital foundation. She pushed for better access for working families, cited mortality rates, refused to back down when older board members called her overly emotional. Emotion, she said clearly, is what happens when you care about people dying. Perhaps you should try it. 2 board members resigned in protest. 3 new ones joined in support. News traveled fast. The Duchess of Blackwood is making waves. Unconventional, outspoken, impossible to ignore. Adrian heard, of course. He sent a letter. Formal, controlled. Your activities are attracting attention. We should discuss appropriate boundaries for your public role. She sent one back. No. That was all. Just no. She didn't hear from him for another week. Then he showed up. Cecilia was dressing for an evening at the opera when her maid announced, "His Grace is here, ma'am. Downstairs." Her hand stilled on her necklace clasp. "Tell him I'll be down shortly." She took her time, fixed her hair, adjusted her gown, deep emerald silk that made her look powerful instead of pretty. When she finally descended the stairs, Adrian was pacing the foyer like a caged animal. He stopped when he saw her. His eyes traveled over her dress, her posture, the cool expression on her face. "You look..." He paused. "Different." "I am different." She didn't smile. "What do you want, Adrian?" "To talk, in private." She led him to the study, closed the door. They stood on opposite sides of the room like opposing generals before a battle. "You can't keep doing this," he said. "Doing what?" This campaign. Making yourself the center of attention. Embarrassing me. I'm not embarrassing you. I'm existing, loudly. If that embarrasses you, that's your problem, not mine." His jaw tightened. "You're my wife. Your reputation affects mine." "Then perhaps you should have built a reputation worth protecting." Her voice was sharp, cutting. "I'm doing nothing shameful. I'm attending parties, speaking intelligently, helping people. If that threatens you, it says more about your insecurity than my behavior." "I'm not insecure." "You're terrified." She stepped closer. "Terrified that I'm proving I don't need you, that I can be powerful without your permission, that people respect me for who I am, not whose name I carry." Adrian's face flushed. "That's not... It's exactly that." She was close enough now to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and released. "You wanted a wife who'd stay quiet, stay hidden, stay grateful. You got one who refuses to disappear, and you don't know what to do with that." For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, quietly, "You're right." She hadn't expected that. "What?" "You're right. I don't know what to do with you." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. I thought if I kept distance, kept control, everything would be simple. But you're not simple. You're..." He stopped. "I'm what?" "You're better than I deserve." The words hung in the air between them. Raw, true. Cecilia felt something crack in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. He was trying. Badly, clumsily, but trying. "Adrian," she said carefully, "I don't want to destroy you. I just want to be seen." "You are seen, trust me." He laughed, bitter. "Half of London won't shut up about you." "I don't care about London. I care about you seeing me." He met her eyes. "I do see you. That's the problem. I see you and I..." He stopped again, that familiar wall slamming down. "You what?" "Nothing. It doesn't matter." "It does matter." "No." His voice turned hard again. "It doesn't. Because seeing you, caring about you, that makes me vulnerable, and I can't afford that." Cecilia felt the anger return, sharp and hot. "So you'd rather be alone? Miserable but safe?" "Yes." The honesty of it gutted her. "Then you're a coward." Adrian flinched like she'd slapped him. "Maybe I am, but at least I'm honest about it." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "Do what you want, Cecilia. I won't stop you. But don't expect me to celebrate it, and don't expect me to change." He left. Cecilia stood there shaking, with rage, with grief, with something she couldn't name. She'd wanted to break through, she had, but the man underneath was so damaged, so scared, She didn't know if he could be saved, and she didn't know if she had the strength to try. But she wasn't giving up. Not on herself. The next morning, Lady Catherine sent a note. "Dinner tonight. Bring your spine. You'll need it." Cecilia went. The dinner was at Lord Hastings' estate, a sprawling mansion in Mayfair filled with politicians, military officers, wealthy merchants. The kind of gathering where policy was shaped over wine and dessert. Cecilia was the only woman at the table besides Lady Catherine. "Gentlemen," Lady Catherine said, settling into her chair with the air of someone who owned the room, "allow me to introduce the Duchess of Blackwood. She has opinions on land reform. I suggest you listen." They didn't want to listen. She could see it in their faces, polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the way they glanced at each other like, "Why is she here?" But Lady Catherine had power, so they pretended. Lord Hastings started the conversation, directing questions at the men. Trade routes, tariffs, manufacturing. Cecilia listened, filing away information. Then someone mentioned rural poverty. "It's unfortunate," one man said, waving his fork, "but ultimately unsolvable. The poor will always be with us." "Unsolvable or unprofitable to solve," Cecilia said. The table went quiet. The man blinked at her. "I'm sorry?" "You said unsolvable. I'm asking if you mean it's impossible or just not worth the investment." "Well, it's a matter of economics. Economics built on the assumption that human life has measurable value. But whose formula are we using? Because from where I sit, rural workers generate enormous wealth. They just don't get to keep it." Lord Hastings leaned forward, interested now. "Go on." Cecilia took a breath. This was the moment. Speak or stay silent, she spoke. Blackwood Estate has 243 tenant workers. For years, they were treated as expendable. Low wages, minimal investment, crumbling infrastructure. Productivity was stagnant. Morale was abysmal. I changed the model. Increased wages by 15%, invested in housing and education, gave workers stake in productivity gains. Within 6 months, output increased by 22%, revenue went up, costs went down, and people stopped dying of preventable illness. The table was silent. "You have data to support this?" another man asked. "I have ledgers, mortality records, and grain yields. I can provide all of it." Lady Catherine was smiling into her wine glass. Lord Hastings set down his fork. "That's remarkable. Most estates don't see that kind of return on labor investment. Most estates treat labor as cost, not capital. It's short-sighted." "And your husband supports this approach?" someone asked. The trap was obvious. Cecilia sidestepped. "My husband manages the political side. I manage the operational side. We each play to our strengths." It wasn't entirely true, but it was diplomatic. The conversation shifted. They started asking her real questions about implementation, resistance, scalability. She answered all of it, confident and clear. By the end of the night, 3 men had asked for meetings. Lord Hastings invited her to present her findings to a parliamentary committee. "You've made an impression," Lady Catherine said as they left. "Dangerous and useful in equal measure." "Did I overstep?" "Darling, you obliterated the step, but you did it so well they can't complain without looking foolish." She squeezed Cecilia's arm. "You're playing at a level most women never reach. Just remember, the higher you climb, the more they'll want to watch you fall." Cecilia nodded. She understood, but she wasn't backing down. The parliamentary presentation happened 2 weeks later. Cecilia stood in a wood-paneled room in front of 20 men who looked at her like a curiosity. Interesting, but ultimately dismissible. She didn't give them a chance to dismiss her. She presented data, showed before and after ledgers, mortality statistics, productivity charts, spoke clearly, confidently, without apology. Halfway through, she saw their expressions change, from polite tolerance to genuine interest. "This model could be applied across multiple estates," one man said. "It could be applied nationally," Cecilia corrected, "with proper incentives and oversight." "And you believe landowners would cooperate?" "I believe they'd cooperate if their alternative was losing their workforce to factories." "Cities are growing, Your Grace. Rural workers are leaving because life on estates is unbearable. Change that, and you stabilize the entire agricultural economy." They asked more questions. She answered all of them. When she finished, the room was silent. Then one man started clapping, then another, then all of them. Lord Hastings approached her afterward. That was extraordinary. You should consider writing a formal proposal. I could get it in front of the right people. I'll start tonight. He smiled. I believe you will. News of the presentation spread. Duchess addresses Parliament. Blackwood's wife proposes rural reform. Unconventional Duchess wins unlikely allies. Cecilia read the papers over breakfast, feeling something like pride. Then the door opened and Adrian walked in. She looked up, surprised. I didn't know you were in London? I wasn't, until I heard you addressed Parliament. He tossed a newspaper onto the table, without telling me. I didn't need your permission. No, apparently you don't need me at all. His voice was cold, but something else lurked underneath. Hurt, maybe, or fear. Cecilia set down her tea. What do you want from me, Adrian? Seriously, because I don't understand. You don't want a wife who's invisible, because that reflects poorly on you. But you don't want a wife who's visible, because that threatens you. So what do you want? I want... He stopped, struggling. I want things to be simple. Life isn't simple. Marriage isn't simple. People aren't simple. I know that. Do you? Because you keep acting like you can control everything. Control me, control your emotions, control the narrative. But you can't. And the harder you try, the more you lose. Adrian's face twisted. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see what's happening? You're becoming more powerful than me, more respected, more... He stopped. More what? More everything. The words came out broken. And I don't know how to be the husband of someone like that. Cecilia stood, moving around the table toward him. Then stop trying to be my husband and try being my partner. I don't know how to do that. Learn, or let me go. The ultimatum hung between them. Adrian stared at her, something desperate in his eyes. I can't let you go. Then change. You keep saying you don't know how. But that's a lie, Adrian. You're brilliant, strategic, capable of anything you set your mind to. You just won't set your mind to this because you're scared. And I'm tired of your fear mattering more than my happiness. She walked past him toward the door. Where are you going? He asked. To live my life. You should try living yours. She left him standing there, alone in the breakfast room, and felt nothing but exhausted. But she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Lord Hastings sent her proposal to colleagues. Responses came back, some supportive, some skeptical, some outright hostile. A woman has no place advising on economic policy. The Duchess forgets her station. This is what happens when wives are given too much freedom. Cecilia read them all and burned them in the fireplace. Lady Catherine found her watching the flames. Pushback? She asked. Predictable. Good. If they weren't threatened, you wouldn't be effective. She sat beside Cecilia. But you need to be prepared. They're going to come for you, not with arguments, with scandal. Cecilia frowned. What do you mean? I mean they'll dig into your life, your marriage, your past. They'll find anything they can twist. And if they can't find anything, they'll invent it. Lady Catherine's voice was serious. You need to be beyond reproach. One misstep, and they'll destroy you. I've done nothing wrong. That won't matter. Perception is reality in this world. The warning echoed in Cecilia's mind for days. Then the rumors started. Whispers at parties, knowing glances. Cecilia heard fragments, inappropriate relationship, unseemly closeness, more than friends. At first she didn't understand, then Margaret pulled her aside at a ball. There's talk, Margaret said quietly. About you and Lord Hastings. Cecilia's stomach dropped. What kind of talk? That you've been meeting him privately, that the relationship is improper. That's insane. We've been working on the proposal. I know, but they're twisting it, saying a married woman has no business meeting alone with another man, that your husband must be humiliated. Margaret's expression was grim. It's starting to spread. Cecilia felt cold. Who started it? Does it matter? It's out there now. It mattered, because rumors like this didn't start themselves. Someone wanted her silenced, someone powerful enough to weaponize gossip. She confronted Lord Hastings at his office the next day. "Have you heard the rumors?" she asked. He sighed. "Yes, and I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this." "Who's behind it?" "Could be anyone, but if I had to guess, Lord Pemberton. He's been vocal about opposing your proposal, sees it as government overreach." Hastings looked uncomfortable. He's also known for destroying political opponents through scandal. If he can discredit you personally, your ideas die with your reputation. Cecilia's hands clenched. "So what do I do?" "You could step back. Let the proposal go forward without your name attached." "Absolutely not." "Then you fight. But it won't be clean." "Nothing about this has been clean." She left his office and went straight to Lady Catherine. "I need help," she said. Lady Catherine listened to everything, her expression unreadable. When Cecilia finished, she sat back. "You have two options, retreat or attack. If you retreat, you survive, but you lose. If you attack, you risk everything, but you might win." "How do I attack?" "You make the scandal impossible to believe. You bring Adrian into this, publicly, visibly. Show a united front. Make it clear that your marriage is solid, that your work has his full support. Destroy the narrative before it hardens into truth." Cecilia's throat tightened. "Adrian won't do that. He barely acknowledges me in public." "Then make him. You said you wanted him to choose to be a partner or let you go. Force the choice, now, before this destroys you both." That night, Cecilia wrote Adrian a letter. Not formal, raw. "They're trying to destroy me with lies. Lies about my character, my marriage, my intentions. I can fight this alone, but I'll probably lose. Or you can stand beside me, publicly, genuinely, and we can end this together. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to defend me. To show the world that we are partners, even if we're not perfect. You said you can't let me go. Prove it. The Ashford ball is tomorrow night. Come with me. Stand with me. Or let this be the end. Your wife, Cecilia." She sent it before she could change her mind. The next day passed in agonizing silence. Cecilia dressed for the ball, her hands shaking as her maid laced her corset. She chose a gown that was both beautiful and defiant, midnight blue with silver threading, dramatic without being scandalous. She stood in front of the mirror, alone. Then she heard footsteps on the stairs. Adrian appeared in the doorway, dressed for the ball. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. "I got your letter," he said. Cecilia's heart pounded. "And?" He stepped into the room, stopped a few feet away. "I'm a coward. You were right about that. I've been hiding behind duty and control because it's easier than risking anything real." "Adrian, let me finish." His voice shook slightly. "I don't know how to be a good husband. I don't know how to show affection or vulnerability or any of the things you deserve. But I know you're the strongest person I've ever met, and watching you build a life without me has been—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "It's been terrifying because I realized I want to be part of it, part of you, even if I don't know how." Cecilia felt tears threatening. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll stand with you tonight, and every night after, if you'll let me." He held out his hand. "I can't promise I'll be good at this, but I'll try, if that's enough." She looked at his hand, steady, open, waiting. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a choice, his choice. She took his hand. "It's enough," she whispered. "For now." They arrived at the Ashford ball together, stepping out of the carriage into a sea of staring faces. Cecilia felt every eye on them, heard the whispers spreading like fire. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Together, they walked through the entrance, into the ballroom where 500 people waited to watch them fail or survive. The music played. The crowd watched. And for the first time since their wedding, Adrian pulled Cecilia onto the dance floor. The waltz was slow, deliberate. Every step felt like a declaration. Adrian's hand rested on Cecilia's waist, not possessively, but present, real. She could feel the tension in his fingers, the way his breath came slightly uneven. He was terrified. She could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way he held himself like a man walking into battle. But he was here. The ballroom watched. Every face turned toward them, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. The whispers hadn't stopped. They'd just gotten quieter, more vicious. "They're staring," Adrian said quietly. "Let them." "You're not nervous?" Cecilia met his eyes. "I'm furious. There's a difference." A muscle in his jaw twitched, almost a smile. "Good." They turned, moved through the steps. The music swelled around them, but Cecilia barely heard it. She was too focused on the faces at the edge of the floor, Lord Pemberton, watching with cold calculation. Lady Worthington, her expression dripping with false sympathy. Others she didn't recognize, but whose hostility was clear. When the dance ended, Adrian didn't let go of her hand. He led her directly to the refreshment table, positioned them where everyone could see. Lady Catherine appeared beside them, sharp-eyed and smiling. "Well, that was a statement." "Was it enough?" Cecilia asked quietly. "It's a start, but you'll need more than one dance to kill a scandal." She glanced toward where Lord Pemberton stood with a cluster of older men. "They're regrouping. Expect the next attack to be more direct." She was right. 10 minutes later, Lady Worthington swept up to them, all false warmth and poisoned honey. "Your Grace," she said to Cecilia, ignoring Adrian entirely. "How lovely to see you. Though I must say, I'm surprised you came tonight, given the talk." Cecilia smiled, ice cold. "I don't listen to gossip, Lady Worthington. It's usually started by people with nothing better to do." Lady Worthington's smile tightened. "Of course. Though when one's reputation is questioned, it's often wise to exercise discretion, avoid situations that might be misinterpreted." "Such as?" "Private meetings with gentlemen, unescorted appearances, the sorts of things that make a husband look—" She glanced at Adrian, her meaning clear. "Inadequate." Adrian's hand tightened on his glass. Cecilia felt him tense beside her, saw the muscle in his jaw working. Before she could respond, he did. "My wife," Adrian said, his voice cutting across the conversation, "requires no escort because she is more than capable of representing this family alone. Her intelligence, her work, and her character speak for themselves. If anyone finds that threatening, perhaps they should examine their own inadequacies instead of inventing hers." Lady Worthington's face went white, then red. "I was merely suggesting, I'm not interested in your suggestions." Adrian's voice was cold, final. "If you have concerns about my marriage, you're welcome to keep them to yourself. Otherwise, I'd recommend you find someone else to slander." He turned his back on her, a deliberate insult, and guided Cecilia away. Her heart was hammering. "Adrian, don't." His voice was low, strained. "Don't tell me I shouldn't have said that. I'm tired of watching people attack you while I stand there silent." "I wasn't going to tell you that." She stopped him, made him look at her. "I was going to say thank you." Something shifted in his face. Surprise, then something softer. "You don't need to thank me for basic decency." "I've gotten so little of it from you I wasn't sure it existed." He flinched. "That's fair." They stood there in the middle of the ballroom, people flowing around them like water around stones. For the first time since they'd married, they weren't performing. They were just there, together. "This isn't going to stop, is it?" Cecilia said. "The rumors, the attacks." "No, it'll get worse before it gets better." Adrian's expression hardened. "But we'll handle it together." The word felt fragile, new, but real. Lord Hastings found them an hour later, his face grave. "We need to talk. Privately." They followed him to a side room, away from the crowd. He closed the door, checked the hallway, then turned to face them. "Lord Pemberton is making a formal complaint to the House of Lords," he said. "He's claiming your proposal is based on fraudulent data, that you manipulated estate records to support a political agenda." Cecilia's stomach dropped. "That's a lie." "Of course it is, but he's demanding an investigation. If he succeeds, they'll audit Blackwood's records. And if they find any discrepancies, even honest mistakes, he'll use it to destroy your credibility completely." Adrian stepped forward. "He can't access private estate records without cause." "He's claiming cause. Says public funds might be misallocated if Parliament acts on false information. Hastings looked at Cecilia. This isn't about truth, it's about silencing you. If he can prove you lied, or even make people believe you lied, you're finished. Then we prove I didn't, Cecilia said. The records are accurate. Let them investigate. It's not that simple. Investigations take months. During that time, your reputation will be shredded. Every ally will distance themselves to avoid contamination. By the time you're cleared, if you're cleared, the damage will be permanent. Adrian's voice was sharp. What are our options? Fight or settle. If you withdraw the proposal publicly, acknowledge errors in judgment, Pemberton backs off. Absolutely not, Cecilia said. Then you fight. But you need leverage, something that makes Pemberton more afraid of you than you are of him. Cecilia's mind raced. He's hiding something. He has to be. People don't attack this viciously unless they're protecting something. Hastings nodded slowly. Possibly. But finding it in time, I'll find it, Adrian said. Both Cecilia and Hastings turned to him. You? Hastings said. I know people. Investigators, informants. If Pemberton has secrets, I'll dig them up. His expression was cold, calculating. No one threatens my wife without consequences. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her. Instead, Cecilia felt something like relief. He was choosing to fight. For her. How long do you need? Hastings asked. A week, maybe less. You have 3 days. After that, Pemberton files his formal complaint, and this becomes public. Hastings looked between them. Are you sure about this? If you're wrong, if there's nothing to find, there's always something, Adrian said. People like Pemberton don't build empires without cutting corners. They left the ball early, together. The carriage ride back was silent, both of them thinking. When they arrived at the townhouse, Adrian followed her inside instead of leaving for his club. We need to go through everything, he said. Every record, every ledger. Make sure there's nothing they can twist. Cecilia nodded. I'll start pulling files. They worked through the night, spread documents across the study floor, cross-referenced numbers, checked calculations. Cecilia explained every change she'd made, every decision, every outcome. Adrian listened, asked sharp questions, took notes. Around 3 a.m, he sat back, rubbing his eyes. This is solid. Better than solid. You've documented everything. Then why am I still terrified? Because you're smart enough to know documentation doesn't matter if people want to believe the lie. He looked at her, but we're not giving them that chance. How? By finding out what Pemberton's really afraid of. He left before dawn, taking a list of names and connections. Cecilia watched from the window as his carriage disappeared into the dark streets, feeling the weight of trust settling over her like a cloak. He was trying, really trying. The next 2 days were agony. Cecilia attended scheduled appearances, smiled through whispers, deflected questions about the investigation rumors that were already spreading. Lady Catherine stayed close, running interference, but even she looked concerned. This is moving faster than I expected, she admitted. Pemberton's pushing hard. He wants this settled before you can mount a defense. Adrian's working on it. And if he doesn't find anything in time? Cecilia didn't have an answer. On the 3rd morning, Adrian burst through the door of the breakfast room, disheveled and intense. He hadn't slept. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the rough stubble on his jaw. I found it, he said. Cecilia stood. Found what? Pemberton's secret. And it's worse than I thought. He dropped a stack of papers on the table. Financial records, shipping manifests, correspondence. He's been embezzling, Adrian said. From the naval supply contracts his family controls. Skimming profits, bribing inspectors, providing substandard materials to military ships. Cecilia's breath caught. That's treason. Close enough. If this gets out, he's ruined. His family's ruined. Everything he's built collapses. How did you find this? I have contacts at the Treasury, people who owe me favors. They've suspected Pemberton for years but couldn't prove it. Adrian's smile was sharp, dangerous. I gave them proof. What do we do with it? We use it. Today. Before he files his complaint. They went to Pemberton's estate that afternoon, unannounced. The butler tried to turn them away, but Adrian pushed past. "Tell your master the Duke of Blackwood is here. Now." 5 minutes later, they were in Pemberton's study. He stood behind his desk, fury barely contained. "How dare you force your way into my home?" Adrian threw the documents onto the desk. "Embezzlement, fraud, supplying defective materials to His Majesty's Navy. Should I continue?" Pemberton's face went pale. He looked at the papers, then at Adrian. "Where did you get these?" "That's irrelevant. What matters is what I do with them." Adrian leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. "You have two choices. Drop your investigation into my wife, withdraw all complaints, and cease your campaign against her. Or I take these to the Treasury, the House of Lords, and every newspaper in London. By tomorrow, you'll be arrested. Your family will be destitute. Your name will be synonymous with traitor." Pemberton's hands shook. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The silence stretched. Cecilia watched Pemberton's face cycle through emotions: rage, fear, calculation. Finally, he sat down heavily. "What do you want?" "I told you. Leave my wife alone. Publicly retract any claims of fraudulent data. And make sure everyone in your circle knows that the Duchess of Blackwood is beyond reproach. And if I do this, these documents stay private for now. You'll hold them over me forever." Adrian smiled, cold. "Yes, that's exactly what I'll do. Consider it insurance." Pemberton looked at Cecilia, hatred burning in his eyes. "You've made a powerful enemy." "I've made many," she said calmly. "What's one more?" They left him sitting there, broken. In the carriage, Cecilia turned to Adrian. "That was necessary. I was going to say terrifying and brilliant." He looked at her, something raw in his expression. "I told you I'd stand with you. I meant it." "By blackmailing a lord?" "By protecting what's mine." He paused. "What's ours?" The correction felt significant. That evening, word spread through London like wildfire. Lord Pemberton had withdrawn his complaint, issued a public statement praising the Duchess of Blackwood's work, and would be retiring from public life for personal reasons. The rumors about Cecilia died overnight. Lady Catherine appeared at the townhouse with champagne. "Whatever you did, it worked. Pemberton's finished, and you're untouchable now. Everyone's too afraid to come after you." "They should be," Adrian said quietly. Margaret arrived an hour later, eyes wide. "Did you actually threaten to destroy Pemberton?" "Adrian did," Cecilia said. Margaret looked at her brother. "I didn't think you had it in you." "Neither did I." He poured himself a drink. "Turns out I'm more ruthless than I thought when someone I care about is threatened." The room went silent. Someone I care about. He'd said it casually, but everyone heard it, felt it. Cecilia's throat tightened. "Adrian," he set down his glass. "I need to tell you something, all of you." He looked at Margaret, then Lady Catherine, then settled on Cecilia. "I've spent my entire life afraid of caring about people, afraid it would make me weak, controllable. My father beat that into me, the woman I loved before. She proved him right. Or I thought she did." "Adrian, you don't have to," Cecilia started. "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "I've been a terrible husband, cold, distant, cruel in my absence. I told myself it was protection, but it was cowardice. And watching you build a life without me, watching you become this force that terrifies half of London." He stopped, swallowed. "It made me realize I don't want protection. I want you. I want to be worthy of you." Cecilia felt tears burning. "You're not there yet." "I know, but I'm trying." He stepped closer. "I can't promise I'll be good at this. I can't promise I won't fall back into old habits. But I can promise I'll keep trying, if you'll let me." She looked at him, really looked, saw the fear still there, the damage, the walls, but also saw the cracks, the effort, the genuine desire to change. "I'll let you try," she said softly, "but I won't settle for half measures. You're either all in or we end this." "I'm all in." Margaret cleared her throat. "Well, this is awkward. Should we leave?" "Yes," Adrian said, not looking away from Cecilia. Lady Catherine and Margaret exchanged glances, grabbed the champagne and left quickly. The door closed. They stood alone. I don't know how to do this, Adrian said. Be close to someone. Trust them. Neither do I. You've spent 8 months teaching me not to. Then we'll figure it out together. He reached for her hand, hesitant. Can we try? Cecilia let him take it. We can try. He pulled her closer, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When he kissed her, it wasn't like their wedding. It wasn't cold or obligatory. It was tentative, nervous, real. His hands shook slightly where they touched her face. She kissed him back, pouring months of frustration and hope and fear into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I'm sorry, he whispered, for all of it. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll hold you to that. They spent the night together. Actually together, not just sharing a space. Talking until dawn, sharing pieces of themselves they'd kept hidden. Adrian told her about his father, the beatings, the first woman he'd loved and lost. Cecilia told him about the loneliness of their marriage, the pain of being invisible, the strength she'd found in spite of him. It wasn't easy. There were silences, moments where walls went up, but they pushed through. By morning, something had shifted. Not fixed, they were too damaged for quick fixes, but changed, moving in the same direction instead of opposite ones. The next week was different. Adrian didn't leave for his club every night, didn't hide in his study. They took meals together, attended events together, presented a united front that was increasingly genuine instead of performed. London noticed. The Duke and Duchess seem reconciled, someone said at a dinner party. More than reconciled, another replied. They actually seem to like each other. It was novel enough to be newsworthy, the cold Duke warming to his brilliant wife, the independent Duchess allowing her husband in. But while they were building something fragile and new, danger was gathering in places they couldn't see. Sir Richard Cross appeared at their door one evening, his expression grim. We need to talk, all three of us. He glanced at Cecilia. Your Grace, what I'm about to tell you is classified, but given your recent activities, I think you've earned the right to know. They sat in the study, cross-paced. There's a problem, a significant one. We've been tracking financial irregularities tied to French interests, money moving through British accounts, funding we can't trace. We suspected espionage, but couldn't prove it. What does this have to do with us? Adrian asked. Your wife's work on estate finance, her proposal to Parliament. She's exposed patterns that match what we've been seeing. Cross stopped, looked at Cecilia. You have a talent for finding hidden money. We need that talent. For the crown. Cecilia frowned. You want me to, what? Investigate treason? I want you to help us find it. Someone's funneling money to France, someone high up, well-connected, someone who can move large sums without raising suspicion. He leaned forward. Your social position gives you access we don't have. You attend parties with every major financial player in England. You could ask questions, look at records, find connections. Absolutely not, Adrian said. This is dangerous. I'm not asking you, Cross said. I'm asking her. Cecilia's mind raced. Espionage, treason. This was beyond anything she'd done before. But also, this was real power, real purpose. What would I have to do? She asked. Cecilia, Adrian started. Let me hear him out. Cross outlined it. Attending specific events, befriending key targets, gaining access to private financial documents, looking for patterns, unusual transactions, anything that didn't fit. It's dangerous, he admitted. If they suspect you're investigating, they'll act, possibly violently. Who's they? Cecilia asked. We don't know yet. That's what you'd help us find out. Adrian stood, agitated. This is insane. You're asking my wife to spy on peers of the realm. I'm asking your wife to serve her country, Cross said sharply. She's already proven she's capable of extraordinary things. This is just another one. Cecilia looked at Adrian, saw the fear in his eyes, the protectiveness, but also saw something else, recognition. He knew she could do this, knew she wanted to. I need time to think, she said. You have 24 hours, Cross said. After that, we move forward without you, and the traitor keeps bleeding England dry. He left. Adrian turned to her immediately. You can't seriously be considering this. Why not? Because it's dangerous. Because if these people are funding France, they won't hesitate to kill anyone who threatens them. I know the risks. No, you don't. His voice cracked. You think you do, but you don't. These aren't society matrons spreading gossip. These are people who commit treason, who kill for money and power. And that's exactly why I have to do this. Cecilia stood, facing him. Everything I've done, the estate, the proposal, fighting Pemberton, it's all led to this. A chance to do something that actually matters. Something bigger than us. Nothing's bigger than keeping you alive. I'm not asking your permission, Adrian. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Like hell you are. You said you'd stand with me. Was that a lie? He stopped, breathing hard. That's not fair. None of this is fair, but it's necessary. She softened slightly. I need to do this. Not just for England, for me. To prove I'm more than a decorative duchess, that I can change things that matter. Adrian's face twisted with conflict. And if something happens to you, then you'll survive. Like you always do. I don't want to survive. Not anymore. His voice broke. I want to live. With you. The words hit her chest like a physical blow. He meant it. She could see it in every line of his face. Then help me, she said quietly. Don't try to stop me. Help me be smart about it. Use your connections, your knowledge. Make sure I don't go in blind. He stared at her for a long moment, then defeated. You're really going to do this? Yes. Then I'm coming with you. Every step. Adrian, no. If you're doing this insane thing, I'm there, watching your back, protecting you. His jaw set. You said you wanted a partner. This is what partners do. Despite everything, Cecilia smiled. All right, partners. They told Cross the next morning. He looked unsurprised. I expected as much. You're both stubborn enough to make this work. He laid out the plan. We start with Lord Vernon's gala next week. He's one of our primary suspects. Financial ties to France, large unexplained income, frequent trips abroad. You'll attend as guests, get close to him, see if you can access his private study. And if he catches us, Cecilia asked, don't get caught. The week leading up to the gala was intense. Cross-trained them, what to look for, how to copy documents without being seen, how to recognize surveillance, how to lie convincingly. You're naturals at this, Cross said after one session. Most people crack under interrogation. You two just get colder. We've had practice, Adrian said dryly. The night of Vernon's gala arrived too quickly. Cecilia dressed in a gown with hidden pockets, Cross's suggestion. Adrian wore a jacket with similar modifications. In the carriage, he took her hand. Last chance to back out. Not a chance. I didn't think so. He squeezed her fingers. Stay close. If anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. Agreed. Vernon's estate was magnificent. Sprawling gardens, crystal chandeliers, hundreds of guests. They entered through the main hall, immediately separating as planned. Cecilia would distract Vernon while Adrian searched the study. She found Vernon by the terrace, holding court with a group of merchants. He was older, silver-haired, charming in a practiced way. Your Grace, he said when he saw her. What a delightful surprise. I didn't know you'd be attending. I wouldn't miss it. Your galas are legendary. You flatter me. His eyes assessed her. I've heard much about you. The Duchess, who's reforming England, one estate at a time. Hardly reforming, just improving. They talked. Light, easy conversation. She laughed at his jokes, asked about his travels, subtly steered toward finances. He was guarded, but friendly. Meanwhile, Adrian moved through the house, found the study on the second floor, locked. He picked it, Cross had taught him, and slipped inside. Documents everywhere, ledgers, correspondence, shipping records. He worked quickly, photographing pages with a small camera Cross had provided. His hands were steady, efficient. Then he heard footsteps in the hall. He froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Downstairs, Cecilia saw one of Vernon's men heading toward the stairs. Her stomach dropped. Adrian had been gone too long. She had to create a distraction. Lord Vernon, she said loudly, I'm afraid I feel rather faint. The heat. She swayed dramatically. Vernon caught her arm, concerned. Your Grace, someone fetch water! People rushed over. Chaos erupted. The man on the stairs turned back, hurried down to help. In the study, Adrian heard the commotion, seized the opportunity, finished photographing the last document, returned everything to its place, slipped out and back downstairs. He found Cecilia surrounded by concerned guests, fanning herself with Vernon hovering protectively. Darling, Adrian said, pushing through. What happened? Just the heat. I'm fine now. Vernon looked between them. Perhaps you should retire for the evening, Your Grace. Rest. Yes, I think that's wise. She stood, leaning on Adrian. Thank you for your concern. They made their exit, got into the carriage. Once the door closed, Adrian sagged against the seat. That was too close. Did you get it? He patted his jacket. Everything. They delivered the photographs to Cross that night. He reviewed them, his expression darkening with each page. This is it. Proof. Vernon's been moving money through shell companies directly to French intelligence. He looked up. You did it. We have what we need to arrest him. Cecilia felt a surge of triumph. When? Tomorrow, quietly, so he doesn't have time to warn his associates. Cross smiled grimly. You've just exposed the biggest espionage operation in a decade. Adrian and Cecilia left feeling vindicated, powerful, successful. They didn't notice the carriage following them, didn't see the man watching from the shadows, didn't know that Vernon had suspected them all along, and that tomorrow he wouldn't be the one arrested. They would be. The soldiers came at dawn. Cecilia woke to pounding on the door, Adrian already on his feet beside the bed. They'd fallen asleep in each other's arms for the first time. Actually peaceful, actually together. Now his face was pale in the gray light. Stay here, he said. Not a chance. They descended the stairs together. The butler was arguing with 4 uniformed men in the foyer, his voice shrill with panic. You cannot simply barge in here. This is the Duke of Blackwood's residence. Stand aside, the lead officer said. He saw Adrian and Cecilia on the stairs. Your Grace, you're both under arrest. Cecilia's blood went cold. On what charge? Treason, espionage, conspiracy against the crown. He held up a document. We have a warrant signed by Lord Chancellor Ashworth himself. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. This is a mistake. No mistake. You were observed breaking into Lord Vernon's private study, stealing classified documents, passing them to a known French operative. The officer gestured to his men. Take them. Wait, Cecilia started, but the soldiers moved fast. Adrian shoved one back, got his arms pinned for the effort. 2 more grabbed Cecilia, ignoring her protests. Don't touch her, Adrian's voice cracked with rage. Stop resisting or we add assault to the charges, the officer said flatly. They were dragged out into the street. A crowd had already gathered, servants, neighbors, strangers, all watching. Cecilia felt the weight of their stares, heard the whispers starting. The Duchess. Arrested. Treason. They were thrown into separate carriages. Cecilia caught one last glimpse of Adrian, his face twisted with fury and fear, before the door slammed shut. The carriage lurched forward. She was alone with 2 guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. Where are you taking me? She demanded. Silence. I said where? Tower of London, one finally muttered. Both of you. The Tower, where traitors went to die. Cecilia's mind raced. This was Vernon's doing. Had to be. He'd known they were investigating, had set a trap, was now destroying them before they could expose him, but Cross had the evidence. He'd said they were arresting Vernon today. Why were soldiers arresting her instead? Unless Cross was in on it. Unless this went deeper than they'd thought. The tower loomed ahead, ancient stone walls, iron gates. She'd seen it from a distance, never imagined she'd be dragged through its entrance as a prisoner. They took her to a cell. Small, damp, 1 narrow window high up. The door clanged shut, the lock turning with terrible finality. She was alone. Hours passed. No food, no water, no information. Just stone walls and silence. Finally, footsteps. The door opened. A man entered, older, gray-haired, expensive clothes. Lord Chancellor Ashworth. She recognized him from parliamentary functions. Your Grace, he said, sitting across from her like they were having tea. What a regrettable situation. This is a mistake, is it? We have witnesses who saw you enter Lord Vernon's study illegally. We have documents you stole, documents containing state secrets. We have testimony that you passed them to Sir Richard Cross, who we now know is a French asset. Cecilia's stomach dropped. That's insane. Cross works for British intelligence. Cross works for whoever pays him. We've been investigating him for months. Your involvement simply confirmed our suspicions. Ashworth smiled thinly. You and your husband have been manipulated, Your Grace. Used by a traitor to do his dirty work. You're lying. Am I? Then explain why Cross disappeared last night, why his office is empty, his files destroyed, why every contact we had for him has vanished. He leaned forward. He used you, made you think you were serving England when really you were serving France, and now you'll hang for it. No one will believe that. Everyone will believe it. The headstrong Duchess, too ambitious for her own good, manipulated by a charming spy. It's a perfect story. His voice hardened. You have one chance. Confess. Provide everything you know about Cross's network. Give us names, contacts, everything. In exchange, we'll commute your sentence to life imprisonment instead of execution. And Adrian? The Duke is being offered the same deal, separately. Ashworth stood. You have until morning to decide. Choose wisely. He left. Cecilia sat in the dark, her mind spinning. This was wrong, all wrong. Cross wasn't a traitor. Vernon was. But somehow the evidence had been twisted, the narrative reversed. She needed to think, needed to find a way out. The window was too high to reach. The door was solid oak, heavily locked. No weapons, no tools, nothing. But she had her mind, and she'd survive worse than this. She thought about Vernon, about the documents Adrian had photographed. What had been in them? Financial records, shipping manifests, coded correspondence, proof of payments to France. Unless the proof had been planted, unless Vernon had known they were coming, had prepared false evidence for them to find. But why arrest them for stealing documents that incriminated Vernon unless Vernon had powerful friends? Unless those friends wanted the real investigation stopped? She needed to talk to Adrian, needed to know what he knew, coordinate their stories. But they were separated, deliberately, so they couldn't align their defenses. Night fell. The cell grew colder. Cecilia wrapped herself in the thin blanket they'd provided and tried to sleep, failed. At midnight, she heard something. Footsteps. Quiet. Measured. Not guards. The door opened. A figure slipped in, cloaked and hooded. Cecilia scrambled back. Who? The figure pulled back the hood. Lady Catherine. How did you? Cecilia started. I know people who owe me. Lady Catherine knelt beside her. We don't have much time. Listen carefully. Vernon's claiming you and Adrian stole state secrets. He's got half the cabinet backing him. Cross is gone. Whether he betrayed you or was eliminated, we don't know. Either way, you're alone. Not alone. You're here. I'm one woman with limited reach. This goes higher than I can touch. Lady Catherine's expression was grave. But there's a chance. A slim one. Vernon's moving too fast, making mistakes. If we can find them before your trial. When's the trial? 3 days. 3 days to prove their innocence or hang. What do you need from me? Cecilia asked. Everything you remember about that night, every detail, Vernon's study, the documents, anything unusual. Cecilia closed her eyes, forcing her mind back. The study. Dark wood, expensive furniture, documents on the desk, ledgers, letters. She'd only glimpsed them before the distraction, but Adrian had photographed everything. Adrian has copies, she said. The photographs. He hid them before we were arrested. He must have. Where? I don't know. He didn't tell me. Lady Catherine swore softly. Then I need to talk to him. But his cell is more heavily guarded. Can you get a message to him? Tell him to remember the library. The library? He'll understand. It was a gamble, but they'd spent an evening in the Blackwood Library weeks ago talking about hiding places in old estates. If Adrian remembered, he'd know where to direct someone. Lady Catherine nodded. I'll try. But, Cecilia, if this fails, if we can't find evidence in time, it won't fail. It can't. Lady Catherine gripped her hand. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met, but strength won't stop a noose. She left as silently as she'd come. Cecilia spent the rest of the night thinking, planning, refusing to let fear take hold. The next morning, guards brought her to an interrogation room. Ashworth sat across from her with two other men, military officers, stern-faced and cold. Have you reconsidered our offer? Ashworth asked. I have nothing to confess. I'm innocent. Then explain the documents found in your possession. What documents? We passed photographs to Sir Richard Cross, who we believed was British intelligence. Who told you he was intelligence? She hesitated. He did. And you believed him? Without verification? Ashworth's voice dripped with condescension. How convenient. We acted on information we thought was credible. You acted on information provided by a foreign spy. You stole state secrets. You committed treason. He slid a paper across the table. This is your confession. Sign it and live. Refuse and hang. Cecilia looked at the document. It was a masterpiece of lies, admitting guilt, implicating Adrian, claiming manipulation by Cross. No, she said. Your husband is being smarter than you. He's already signed his. The words hit like a physical blow. I don't believe you. Ashworth produced another paper. Adrian's signature at the bottom. Her vision blurred. He confessed to save himself, Ashworth said. Left you to hang alone. Is that the man you want to protect? Something felt wrong. The signature looked right, but Adrian wouldn't. He couldn't. I want to see him, she said. That's not possible. Then I'm not signing anything. Ashworth's face hardened. You're making a fatal mistake. I've made many. This isn't one of them. They dragged her back to the cell. She sat against the wall, trying to breathe through the panic. Had Adrian really betrayed her, or was the confession forged? She had to believe it was forged, had to believe he wouldn't break. That night, Lady Catherine returned with Margaret. We found the photographs, Margaret said breathlessly. Adrian hid them in the townhouse library, inside a hollow book. Lady Catherine retrieved them. And? Cecilia asked. They're damning. To Vernon. Clear proof of payments to France, coded messages, everything. Lady Catherine's voice was urgent. But there's a problem. The photographs show the documents before Vernon altered them. He's claiming the versions you stole were already changed, that you modified them to frame him after Cross recruited you. That's absurd. It doesn't matter if it's absurd. It's his word against yours, and he's a respected lord while you're a troublesome duchess who's made enemies. Lady Catherine paced. We need something stronger, something that proves Vernon's guilt independently. What about his financial records? Real ones, not what we photographed? Impossible to access. His estate is locked down tighter than the tower. Margaret spoke up. What about his associates? If he's funneling money to France, someone else knows about it. Someone who might talk if pressured. Who? Cecilia asked. His solicitor, a man named Graves. He handles all of Vernon's financial arrangements. Margaret looked at Lady Catherine. If we can find him... I know where he is, Lady Catherine said slowly. But getting him to talk won't be easy. He's loyal to Vernon and terrified of crossing him. Everyone has a pressure point, Cecilia said. What's his? Lady Catherine smiled grimly. His daughter. She's engaged to a minor baron. The wedding's in 2 weeks. If that wedding were threatened, you'd blackmail him, Cecilia said. I'd motivate him. There's a difference. They spent an hour planning. Margaret would approach Graves's daughter, hint at scandal that could ruin the engagement. Lady Catherine would offer Graves a way out, testify against Vernon, and the scandal disappears. What about me? Cecilia asked. I can't just sit here. You have to, Lady Catherine said. If they know we're working together, they'll move you, separate us completely. Then work fast. I have less than 3 days. They left. Cecilia waited, every minute stretching like hours. The next day, she was brought before Ashworth again. Last chance, he said. Sign the confession. No. Then you'll hang, tomorrow, at dawn. He stood. Your trial is a formality. The verdict's already decided. Then why wait? Why not just execute me now? Because we're civilized. His smile was cruel. We give traitors the illusion of justice before we kill them. Back in the cell, Cecilia felt the walls closing in. Tomorrow. They were going to kill her tomorrow. Unless Lady Catherine succeeded. Unless Adrian was still fighting. Unless miracles were real. That night she didn't sleep. Just sat by the window, watching the stars through the narrow opening, thinking about everything she'd fought for. The estate, the workers, the proposal. Adrian. She told him she wanted more than survival, wanted to live. Now she might not get the chance. At midnight, footsteps. The door opened. She expected Lady Catherine. Instead, Adrian stumbled in, shoved by guards. The door slammed shut behind him. They stared at each other. He looked terrible, bruised, exhausted, furious. "You didn't sign it," she said. "Of course I didn't sign it." He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. "Did you think I would?" "They showed me a confession. Your signature. Forged. They did the same to me, showed me yours." He held her tighter. "We don't have much time. They're moving up the execution, tonight." Her blood went cold. "How long?" "Hours. Maybe less." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I got us into this. My arrogance, thinking we could play spy—" "Stop. This isn't your fault. It's Vernon's, and we're not done fighting. Cecilia, there's no way out. I've looked. This cell is designed to hold people until they die." "Then we don't escape. We prove our innocence." "How? With what evidence?" "Lady Catherine's working on it. She found a witness, Vernon's solicitor. If he testifies, that's not enough." Adrian cupped her face. "I need you to know something. In case this is... Don't. I love you." The words tumbled out, desperate and raw. "I should have said it months ago. Should have shown you every day. But I was too broken, too scared. And now we're out of time, and I need you to know you're the best thing that ever happened to me. The only real thing in my entire hollow life." Cecilia felt tears streaming down her face. "Adrian, I love you," he repeated. "And I'm sorry I wasted so much time being afraid." She kissed him, hard, desperate, pouring everything unsaid into it. When they broke apart, both were crying. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have for months, even when I hated you." They held each other as the hours slipped away, waiting for salvation or death. At 3 a.m, the door crashed open. Guards flooded in. "Time's up," the lead officer said. "Both of you, now!" They were dragged apart, pulled down different corridors. Cecilia fought, screaming Adrian's name, hearing him roar hers in response. She was taken to a courtyard. A platform waited, noose already prepared. A crowd had gathered. Nobility, commoners, all come to watch a Duchess hang. Cecilia was pushed onto the platform. The executioner approached, rope in hand. Ashworth read the charges. "Cecilia Whitmore, Duchess of Blackwood, you have been found guilty of treason, espionage, and conspiracy against the crown. The sentence is death by hanging. Do you have any final words?" Cecilia looked at the crowd, saw familiar faces, people she'd helped, people she'd fought, people who'd respected her. She saw Lady Catherine in the back, her face twisted with grief. She spoke clearly, loudly. "I am innocent. Lord Vernon is the traitor. He's been funding French intelligence for years, and when we discovered proof, he framed us to protect himself. The documents exist, the truth exists, and it will come out." "Enough," Ashworth said. Proceed." The executioner moved forward. Then someone shouted, "Stop!" Everyone turned. A man pushed through the crowd, older, well-dressed, terrified. Graves, Vernon's solicitor. "Stop this!" he screamed. "She's telling the truth. Vernon's the traitor. I have proof." Ashworth's face went white. "Seize that man!" "No!" Graves pulled out a stack of documents, held them high. "Financial records, payments to French operatives, coded correspondence, everything. Vernon's been selling intelligence for 15 years. The crowd erupted. Guards hesitated, unsure who to obey. Lady Catherine appeared beside Graves, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Lord Chancellor Ashworth, unless you want to be implicated in this conspiracy, I suggest you halt this execution immediately." Ashworth looked trapped. The crowd was watching. Witnesses everywhere. "Cut her down," he said finally. The executioner removed the noose. Cecilia's legs gave out. Guards caught her. "Where's my husband?" she demanded. "Where's Adrian?" "Being executed in the tower," Ashworth said. 10 minutes ago." "No, no." Cecilia broke free, ran, through corridors across courtyards. Lady Catherine and Margaret beside her shouting for guards to stop the execution. They reached the tower courtyard just as Adrian was led onto the platform. "Stop!" Cecilia screamed. Adrian's head snapped up, saw her, alive. The executioner paused. Graves appeared, breathless, waving his documents. "The Duke is innocent. We have proof. Lord Vernon is the traitor." The execution halted. Adrian was pulled off the platform, the noose removed. Cecilia reached him, threw herself into his arms. They held each other, both shaking, both sobbing. "You're alive," he kept saying. "You're alive." "So are you. We both are." Around them, chaos erupted. Graves was presenting evidence to guards, to officials, to anyone who'd listen. Vernon was being arrested, dragged from his estate, screaming about injustice. But Cecilia didn't care about any of it. She just held Adrian, feeling his heart beat against hers. They'd survived. The next hours were a blur. Official apologies, hasty explanations, attempts to sweep the whole mess under aristocratic carpets. Cecilia and Adrian sat in an official's office, refusing to leave until they had answers. Cross was legitimate, the official finally admitted. He was British intelligence, but Vernon had him killed 3 days ago, made it look like he fled to France. We only discovered the truth this morning. "And Ashworth," Adrian demanded. "Not complicit, just incompetent. He believed Vernon's lies." The official looked uncomfortable. "There will be consequences. Vernon will hang. Ashworth will resign. The investigation will continue." "And us?" Cecilia asked. "Fully exonerated, with the Crown's deepest apologies." "Apologies don't return the days we spent thinking we'd die," Adrian said coldly. "No, but perhaps this will." The official slid papers across the desk. "A royal commendation. Recognition for your service in exposing a traitor, and a seat on the Privy Council for the Duchess. His Majesty was impressed by your intelligence work." Cecilia stared at the papers. A council seat. Real political power. "He's trying to buy our silence," Adrian said. "He's trying to make amends," the official corrected. "Accept or decline. It's your choice." Cecilia looked at Adrian. He nodded slightly. "Your call." "I accept," she said. "On one condition. My proposal for rural reform goes to Parliament. Full consideration, no obstruction." The official hesitated. "The Duchess drives a hard bargain. The Duchess nearly died for her country. Think I've earned it." "Agreed." They left the office together, stepping into afternoon sunlight, free, alive, together. A carriage waited. They climbed in, collapsed against the seats. "That was too close," Adrian said. "Way too close." Cecilia laughed, slightly hysterical. "We almost died. Multiple times. And now I'm on the Privy Council." "Now you're on the Privy Council." He shook his head. "You're terrifying. You know that?" "You married me. Best decision I ever made. Worst timing, but best decision." He pulled her close. "I meant what I said. In the cell. I love you." "I know. I love you too." They kissed, slow and deep, tasting survival and future and possibility. When they pulled apart, Cecilia rested her head on his shoulder. "What now?" "Now we go home. To Blackwood. Rest, recover, maybe never do anything this insane again." "Where's the fun in that?" He laughed. "You're impossible. You wouldn't want me any other way." "True." The carriage rolled through London streets. People stared, pointed. News had spread. The Duke and Duchess, who'd nearly been executed, who'd exposed a massive conspiracy, who'd survived against impossible odds. They were famous now. Infamous, maybe, but undeniably powerful. Cecilia looked out the window, watching the city pass. So much had changed. She'd changed. From invisible wife to political force. From lonely girl to woman who'd faced death and won. and beside her sat the man who'd finally chosen to fight with her instead of against her. It wasn't perfect. They were both still damaged, still learning how to be partners instead of strangers. But they were trying, really trying, and that was enough. For now, that was enough. Blackwood Hall looked different in the autumn light. Or maybe Cecilia was different. Hard to tell which had changed more. The carriage rolled through the gates, past fields she'd walked months ago when she'd been desperate and alone. Workers looked up from harvesting, recognized the crest, and stopped to watch. Some removed their caps. Others just stared. News had traveled fast. The Duke and Duchess who'd survived execution, exposed a traitor, become heroes of sorts. Adrian's hand found hers. Ready? For what? Whatever comes next. She squeezed his fingers. With you, always. The staff lined up at the entrance. Mrs. Davison, Thomas, everyone. Their faces showed relief, concern, questions they were too proper to ask. Mrs. Davison stepped forward, her usual composure cracking. Your Grace, we heard, we thought... Her voice broke. Cecilia embraced her. We're all right. We're home. Thank heavens. Mrs. Davison pulled back, wiping her eyes. The rumors were terrible. They said you'd been arrested for treason, that you'd hang... We almost did, Adrian said quietly. But we're here now. That's what matters. Thomas approached, his weathered face creased with emotion. The whole estate's been praying for you, every family. We knew you couldn't be guilty of what they said. Cecilia felt her throat tighten. Thank you, all of you, for believing in us. They went inside. The house felt familiar and foreign at once. Same walls, same rooms, but everything had shifted. They weren't the same people who'd left. That night they sat in the library, fire crackling, wine poured, silence settling like snow. I keep waiting for guards to break down the door, Cecilia said. Me too. Adrian stared at the flames. It doesn't feel real that we survived. But we did. By sheer luck, if Lady Catherine hadn't found Graves, if he hadn't broken... He stopped. We were minutes from dying. I know. She moved closer, rested her head on his shoulder. But we didn't. And now we get to build something different, something real. What does that look like? I don't know yet, but I know I want you in it. Actually, in it, not hiding in London or behind walls. Adrian turned to face her. I'm not hiding anymore. I can't. Not after... He struggled for words. Not after thinking I'd lost you. That changes everything. Does it? Yes? He took her hands. I know I've been terrible at this. At us. But I want to try. Really try. Not just survive together. Live together. Cecilia searched his face. Saw the fear still there, the damage, but also saw something new. Determination. Hope. Then we start tomorrow, she said. Fresh. Both of us. They slept in the same bed that night. Not the Duchess's chambers or the Duke's rooms, but together in the master suite. Adrian held her like he was afraid she'd vanish. She held him back just as tightly. Morning came with sunlight and birdsong. Cecilia woke to Adrian watching her. How long have you been awake? She asked. An hour, maybe more. He touched her face gently. I keep making sure you're real. Very real and very hungry. They breakfasted together, actually together at the same table, sharing food and conversation. The servants looked shocked, pleased, but shocked. We need to address the estate, Adrian said. People will have questions, fears about what happened. Then we tell them the truth, that we fought for something bigger than ourselves and survived. They called a gathering for that afternoon. 243 workers and their families assembled in the main courtyard. Cecilia looked out at faces she'd come to know, children she'd gotten books for, families whose roofs she'd fixed, men and women who'd trusted her when she'd been nobody. Adrian stood beside her, not behind, not ahead. Beside. Thank you all for coming, Cecilia began, her voice carried across the silent crowd. I know rumors have spread about arrests, trials, accusations. I want you to hear the truth from us. She told them everything, the investigation, the trap, the near execution. She didn't soften it, didn't hide the danger. They deserved honesty. We survived, she finished, because people believed in us, and because we believed in something worth fighting for. This estate, these families, a future where everyone has value, not just those born to titles. Adrian stepped forward. I've been absent, neglectful. I treated this place like a business instead of a home. That changes now. My wife showed me what real leadership looks like, caring for people, not just profits. I'm going to try to be worthy of the example she set. Silence. Then Thomas started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Soon the whole courtyard erupted in applause. A woman pushed forward, Mary, whose daughter Cecilia had helped educate. Your Grace, we never believed those lies, not for a second. You've done more for us in months than anyone's done in generations. Others echoed her. Voices rising, overlapping, full of loyalty Cecilia hadn't known existed. She felt tears threatening. Thank you, all of you. This is why we fought. The gathering dispersed slowly, people lingering to offer support, share relief. When the courtyard finally emptied, Cecilia sagged against Adrian. That was harder than I thought. You were perfect. I was terrified. That too. He kissed her temple. But you did it anyway, like always. Over the next weeks, they rebuilt. Not just the estate, themselves. Adrian learned to talk, actually talk, about feelings and fears and the damage his father had inflicted. It came slowly, painfully. He'd choke on words, shut down mid-sentence, retreat into old patterns. But Cecilia waited, pushed gently, refused to let him hide. I'm trying, he said one night after a particularly difficult conversation. But it's like learning a language I was never taught. Then we learned together. I'm not fluent either. You're better at it than me. Only because I had no choice. You taught me to survive without connection. Now I'm teaching you to live with it. He laughed, rough and genuine. We're a disaster. A functional disaster. Is there such a thing? We're proof. They worked on the estate together. Adrian stopped hiding in ledgers and started walking the land, talking to workers, learning names, seeing what Cecilia had seen months ago, that people mattered more than profits. I was wrong, he told Thomas one afternoon, about treating this like a business. People aren't assets. No, Your Grace, they're not. Thomas looked surprised but pleased. Took you long enough to figure that out. Better late than never? We'll see. But Thomas was smiling. Cecilia's proposal went to Parliament in November. She traveled to London for the presentation, Adrian beside her. This time, she wasn't alone. She had support. Lord Hastings, Lady Catherine, others who'd seen her work and believed in it. The parliamentary chamber was packed, hostile faces mixed with curious ones, skeptics with allies. Cecilia stood at the podium and spoke, not about theory or philosophy, about results. Productivity increases, mortality decreases, communities thriving instead of barely surviving. This isn't charity, she said clearly. It's investment, in people, in land, in England's future. We can keep treating workers as expendable, watch them flee to factories and cities, or we can give them reason to stay, to build, to care about the land they work. Questions followed, some genuine, some designed to trip her up. She answered all of them, calm and confident. When the vote came 3 days later, the proposal passed. Narrowly, but it passed. Cecilia sat in the gallery watching the final count, feeling something like vindication. Adrian found her afterward. You did it. We did it. This was as much you as me. Don't downplay your victory. You earned this. Lady Catherine appeared with champagne. To the Duchess who changed England, one estate at a time. They toasted, laughed, celebrated, but the real victory came later when they returned to Blackwood and started implementing changes on a larger scale. Other estates watched, some copied. The model spread. Winter settled over the estate. Snow covered the fields, ice formed on the pond. Cecilia walked the grounds with Adrian, both wrapped in heavy coats. I'm pregnant, she said suddenly. Adrian stopped walking. What? I found out yesterday. Didn't know how to tell you. He stared at her, expression cycling through shock, fear, joy. A child? Yes. Due in early summer. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Unsure if I'm ready. She looked at him. How do you feel? Adrian pulled her close. The same. All of it. His voice shook. I don't know how to be a father. Mine was, you'll be different, better, because you're choosing to be. What if I'm not? What if I mess this up like I messed up everything else? Then we fix it together, like we've fixed everything else. She touched his face. You're not your father, Adrian. You're better than him, kinder, more willing to change. He buried his face in her shoulder. I'm so scared. Me too, but we'll figure it out. They told the household that evening. Mrs. Davison cried. Thomas beamed. Margaret, visiting for the holidays, immediately started planning. A Blackwood heir, she said. Finally, one raised by parents who actually love each other. What a concept. The pregnancy changed things. Adrian became even more protective, hovering, worrying, checking on Cecilia constantly. I'm pregnant, not dying, she said, after he'd asked for the 5th time that day if she needed anything. I know, but I can't help it. You're carrying our child. He struggled. That's everything. Then trust me to take care of myself. And this baby. I'm trying. Try harder. But she softened the words with a kiss. Spring came slowly, melting snow revealing green underneath. Cecilia's belly grew, obvious now. She moved slower, tired easier, but refused to stop working. You should rest, Adrian said, finding her in the study reviewing tenant contracts. I am resting. Sitting down, see? That's not... Adrian, I'm fine. The baby's fine. Stop treating me like glass. You nearly died 6 months ago. Forgive me for being cautious. She sighed. I know you're worried, but I need to feel useful, productive. If I just sit around waiting, I'll go mad. He sat beside her. What if we compromise? You work but shorter hours, and you let me help. You hate administrative work. I hate the idea of you overworking more. She studied him, saw genuine concern, not control. All right, compromise. They worked together more after that. Adrian handling physical tasks, Cecilia managing correspondence and planning. They made a good team, better than either had expected. In late May, Cecilia went into labor. Adrian paced outside the bedroom, useless and terrified. Margaret sat with him, trying to distract him with conversation. It didn't work. She's strong, Margaret said. She'll be fine. You don't know that. I know her. She's survived worse than childbirth. Hours passed. Adrian wore a path in the carpet. Then, finally, a baby's cry. The midwife appeared. Your Grace, you have a son. Both mother and child are healthy. Adrian nearly collapsed with relief. Can I? Of course. He entered the bedroom. Cecilia lay propped against pillows, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. Come meet your son, she said softly. Adrian approached slowly, like the baby might shatter. Cecilia pulled back the blanket. A small, red-faced infant blinked up at him. He's perfect, Adrian whispered. He's loud and demanding, just like his father. Adrian laughed, tears streaming down his face. Can I hold him? Cecilia passed the baby over carefully. Adrian cradled his son, staring in wonder. Hello, he said quietly. I'm your father, and I promise I'll do better than mine did. I'll love you. I'll be here. I'll never make you afraid to feel. The baby yawned, unimpressed. Cecilia smiled. What should we name him? They'd discussed names for weeks without deciding. Now, looking at his son, Adrian knew. Thomas, he said, after the man who showed us what loyalty looks like. Thomas Blackwood. Cecilia tested it. I like it. Tom for short. When he's being difficult. So always, then. They laughed, tired and happy and terrified and in love. The christening happened 6 weeks later. Half of London attended, not because they cared about the baby, but because they wanted to see the Duke and Duchess who'd become legends. Cecilia stood at the front of the chapel, holding Tom, Adrian beside her. Lord Hastings served as godfather, Lady Catherine as godmother. The ceremony was simple, traditional, but what came after wasn't. Adrian addressed the gathered crowd. Thank you all for coming. For those who don't know, and I suspect most of you do, my wife and I didn't have a traditional beginning. We married for duty, lived as strangers, nearly destroyed each other with indifference. Cecilia glanced at him, surprised. They hadn't planned this. But somewhere in that disaster, Adrian continued, we found something real. We learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He looked at Cecilia. My wife taught me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about putting yourself back together afterward. She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. And she taught me that change is possible, even for someone as broken as I was. His voice roughened. I don't deserve her. I probably never will. But I'm grateful every day that she chose to stay. To fight. To build something beautiful out of the wreckage we started with. He raised his glass. To Cecilia, the strongest person I know. And to Tom, may he inherit her courage instead of my cowardice. The room erupted in applause. Cecilia blinked back tears. You didn't tell me you were doing that. I didn't plan it, but it needed saying. She kissed him, not caring who watched. I love you. I love you too. Tom squirmed between them, making angry baby noises. He's hungry, Cecilia said. He's always hungry. Your son. Our son. They slipped away from the celebration, finding quiet in the nursery. Cecilia fed Tom while Adrian watched, still looking at his son with wonder. Do you think we'll mess him up? Adrian asked. Probably. All parents do. She smiled. But we'll mess him up differently than our parents did. That's progress. Low bar. Have to start somewhere. Adrian sat beside her. I never thought I'd have this. A family, real partnership. I thought I was too damaged. You are damaged, so am I. But we're damaged together. She looked at him. That's what makes it work. We're a mess. The best kind of mess. Tom finished eating, fell asleep against Cecilia's chest. They sat in the quiet nursery, listening to their son breathe, both thinking about how far they'd come. From strangers in a loveless marriage to partners who'd survived execution together. From isolation to intimacy. From duty to devotion. It wasn't a fairy tale. There'd be more fights, more struggles, more moments where old wounds reopened, but they'd face it together. The autumn after Tom's birth, Cecilia was invited to address the Royal Society, the first woman ever given that honor. She spoke about economic reform, social responsibility, the moral imperative of caring for workers. The speech was controversial. Half the room applauded. The other half looked scandalized. Cecilia didn't care. She'd stopped caring what people thought months ago, when she'd faced a noose and survived. Adrian waited for her afterward, Tom in his arms. How'd it go? He asked. I think I offended about 50 lords. Good. They needed offending. They walked through London streets together, a family now. People stared, the notorious Duke and Duchess, the baby heir, the scandal that had become a love story. Do you ever regret it? Cecilia asked. Marrying me? All the chaos that came with it? Adrian stopped walking. Never, not once. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even when you're terrifying. Especially when I'm terrifying. Especially then. Tom gurgled happily, oblivious to the weight of their conversation. They continued walking, past the houses where Cecilia had fought for respect, the halls where she'd built power, the streets where she'd nearly died. All of it had led here. To this moment, this family. Years later, historians would debate the Blackwood reforms, whether they truly changed England or just inspired others to try. Scholars would analyze Cecilia's speeches, Adrian's transformation, the unprecedented partnership they'd built. But that day, walking through London with her husband and son, Cecilia didn't think about history or legacy. She thought about the scared girl who'd married a cold duke and decided not to disappear. She thought about the broken man who'd learned to love despite everything telling him not to. She thought about the life they'd built, imperfect, chaotic, real. And she smiled. because they'd done what everyone said was impossible. They'd taken a marriage of convenience and turned it into something worth fighting for. They'd survived, they'd grown, they'd loved, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.